we're going to see some additional topics, also reinforced, a specific topic that I think is important to be reinforced, and then we're going to talk about what's next in the next month, essentially. So I'm going to begin my presentation of a few topics. We're going to see two videos also. And next we're going to have a chat about what is next in this phase of the program. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Okay. This is our last session in the project formulation guide. Remember also the document of the project formulation guide is in the virtual campus. Maybe at the end of the session, we're going to also talk about a little bit the campus and see if everyone is on the site with the login and etc. So we have four topics today: the justification of the project, the development strategies, and the availability of resources, reinforcement of some topics, and also dynamics of project formulation groups. So let's see the justification of the project. In the project document, in the identification document, there is also a topic that is the justification of the project. In this case, we need to write the justification of the project. It must contain the following aspects: the importance of the project for conquering the primary purpose, how the project will solve the detect need and why the initiative has been designed in the manner proposed, and also the future perspective of the problematic situation is based on the project's operation. The justification is simple, it's just like one page with essentially those three topics, three matters. It's very simple. Then also, in the document, we need to match the project with some development strategies and resources availability. So, in the case of the development strategies, project must be framed within the general lines of action of national, regional, or local development plans. This is because they must be in tune with the economic and social cues of action that support the realization of initiatives and investments. To this end, it is recommended to locate the official documents of local and international authorities in which the project in question is framed with an identified development strategy. Linking the project with development strategies is vital to elucidate its ability. This is because it is intended to identify specific policies that have positive or negative consequences on the feasibility and viability of the project. If actors identified in the analysis of those involved have development strategies contrary to the project, they are essential inputs to clarify the initiative viability. So, let's see, let's have a little chat. Why it is important to match the project with development strategies? Someone has an opinion about it, why it is important to match the project with some development strategies, national, local, or international ones? Someone want to comment about it? Hugo?
For me, it is important that the project is matched, especially if it's a developmental project. It has to be matched with what is the trust of the government, whether local or national government. Because if that is not the case, then you would be going with a project that is not within the government's developmental plan. And it will affect in several ways more importantly as related to approval and funding, especially if this funding is going to come from government or through a international donor through the government or from an international donor through the government. If that project is not aligned with the government developmental plan, then you are not likely to receive any funding for it.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Yes. And also, in the case of the viability, maybe along the way of executing the project, also some authorities may be an obstacle, right, in the execution because they are not on board with the project we are proposing. So thank you very much, Joseph. Another commentary, Hugo. You're going to say something or not? Jeremy.
I couldn't hear what the first person said because it's a little noisy here. But I think it's good if your project is in line with the development plans of a country because you can allocate finances much quicker, much easier when, for example, the NGOs uh, go through the documents, the project proposals. For example, they see that it's in line with your country development plan, so it will enable them to um, accept or yes, accept the proposal and give you the funding you asked for.
Yes, thank you very much, Jeremy. Very accurate also. So, as we saw, matching the project with development strategy, the strategies is essential to um, clarify the initiative viability. Then, I think it's the last aspect of the document um, before the logic framework matrix, that is the availability of resources. At this stage, once the project alternative has been selected, it is vital to continue with the visibility of the possible current or potential sources of financing, a fundamental aspect of the project's viability. Therefore, it is recommended to have a constant monitoring instrument for managing project resources. So, a simple chart here, actors, ensure amount and amount to request. We can have our own funds, also some institutional funds, and also some community funds, right? So we are going to be a little more deep in this matter with a video I bring here that is for me very good. In the case of start dilucidating the availability of resources and also when we need the resources, because maybe we don't need all the resources at the same time or at the beginning. Maybe also some resources we need at the end of the project. So I'm going to show you a little example of a teacher that is talking about this matter to be a little bit more profound on this. So there is. I'm going to.
Today we're talking about resource planning for projects, a guide. Sometimes when I'm working with people during their planning process, there's some people who think of resources as only the people resources. And then similarly, but on the other extreme, there's some people who think of resources as only equipment, maybe hardware, software, or some type of tool. So resource planning is so important. I want to take time today to explain what it really is and provide some best practices along with 3 simple steps to get you going on how to. So first of all, let's look at what resource planning really is. It's really a process that you go through to identify the resources required to deliver your specific project. It's also done at a task level of your plan because at the task level, that's where you do have people completing that task and you may need some other resources for that specific task. So resources can include things like equipment, again, hardware, software, other tools. It can be finance. So on some projects, you may be financing the project, so that's another resource that has to be considered. And then there's the personnel, as some people call it, and it's your people resources. There are others, but I want to use these as examples. So the best practices is plan advance of your project start date so you ensure that you have these resources on hand. You also want to get input from your team when you're planning, just to make sure you haven't overlooked something. Maybe so you don't overlook different types of people that you need on the project or any other type of equipment or other needs. You also want to reference your industry standards to ensure that you're meeting all the requirements for your industry. You also want to continue updating this throughout your project. Some projects can span a couple of years, and in that period of time, some standards or requirements may change. You also, again, want to be sure to do this at a task level. Here's also you want to create a guide or set of standards for your project. And then also here, I think this is an important one for me, is use your project management software so you can have all this planning in one place. So here is a guide on how to do your resource planning. I like to break it down in 3 high-level steps. And there's some other whiteboard sessions that take these into further detail, but I want to focus on these 3 to get you going. So first of all, step 1 is to identify what resources are required. So let's focus on equipment and people resources because those are the common ones on most projects. So equipment, hardware, software, tools. What kind of requirements do they have? Are there any specific versions you need to ensure that you're on? Are there any standards that you need to meet for your industry? Also consider, are you going to purchase these, to lease them? And what specific terms may you need for that? Also consider your people or your personnel. What specific roles do you need for your project? Do you need certain experience, skills, expertise, even certifications? In some type of work, specifically in government work, you may need some type of security clearance. Also consider, are these going to be employees that you already have, or you going to contract them directly with you or use a third party? Step 2 is determine when you need them. So determine if you need these resources only during the pre-project planning phase, or do you need them just for a specific time frame? And there's some resources that you just need through the entire project. And then there's some resources like a SWAT team you only need maybe during a crisis situation, but you want to be sure that you planned ahead and that they're available when you need them. And then step 3 is negotiate where and how you get them. So again, determine if they're internal resources or external, or you're going to use a third party to get them. In some cases, you may have to do a request for proposal or a bid. A lot of government type work requires that. So this is a clarification about what resource planning.
Okay, so important aspects of the video. First, usually when we talk about the availability resources, we are only thinking in financial resources, right? But also we need to think in the other resources, specific professionals, for example, the team that is going to lead the execution of the project, um, etc. So when we talk about the availability of resources, in this case, of course, we need to talk about amounts, financial issues, but also we need to start planning the other resources, the human resources, the team resources, etc. So when we execute a project, we are going to have not only the amount or the funds, but also we are going to have the team, right, to get it done. So This is the case of the availability of resources. Some questions or comments about the video and this topic of availability of resources? Jeremy.
Yes, I'm just wondering what is meant by third party, because if you have an internal staff, it's someone that works within the company or the organization. But if you have an external person, is someone out there. So what is then meant with a third party? Can you explain?
Mhm. Yeah, it can be many examples. For example, if we are going to use, we have an organization, a common organization, and we are going to use some international funds, for example, of cooperation, right? Funds of the, I don't know, maybe the United Nations or something like that. So there is a third party, right? That is not us, it's not our organization, but is going also to participate in the funding of the project. So, for example, or maybe another, I don't know, a corporation maybe that is going to donate funding or equipment or etc. So it's also a third party, right?
So it's not the same as the as an external party, as someone out of the company, not working within the company.
Um, Maybe it can be seen as a synonymous, I think.
That's the cube confusion. Exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for me, it can be a synonymous. Okay, let's continue. So we already saw the availability of resources, development strategies, and the importance of it, and also the justification of the project. So let's reinforce some things. Well, this is, remember, the compounds of the project identification. We already saw all the components, right? The project background analysis, the problem identification, solution alternative, selecting the project alternative, general and specific objectives, justification of the project, related development strategies, current and future availability resources, and lastly, we also saw the logical framework matrix. I want to reinforce a specific aspect I saw I think it was the second class, that maybe it is important to reinforce, and is in the project background analysis. When we made the logical framework matrix, the first step is that in the project background analysis, we make also the stakeholder analysis. We saw it back then. But I think it is important to reinforce the topic. Also, I'm going to show you a little video to um, make also an example of it. So remember the stakeholder analysis. In these sections, a quantitative and qualitative diagnosis of the situation that originate the problem is made. It is recommended to assess the problem's position in the case of no acting. That is, an appreciation of the situation without the project, as well as a projection of this with the project. Within this section, it is pertinent to carry out the involvement analysis as a permanent input and constant updating during the project life cycle. Back then, I showed you this matrix. To perform the analysis of the involved, the following matrix is recommended with the element of group, interest or expectations, perceived problems, mandate or resources, and potential conflicts. So, if we are talking about interest, we are talking about I don't know, maybe we have an environmental organization in our community, so there is an interest and an expectation, or also the beneficiaries that want, for example, clean water. Also, the perceived problems related to each of the groups, mandate and resources. In this case, we're talking about some formal aspects. For example, if we are um, dealing with a government, then there are laws, there are other normative that is important to have it there. Also, we're talking, I don't know, about community. They have the resource of closing the street, for example, if they are not happy with the project, or making some demands in the judicial power in the case of our country, etc. and also potential conflicts. We saw this on the second class, but I want to reinforce a little bit the topic with an example of stakeholder analysis using the same, in some cases, the same columns, maybe adding some different also formats of analysis, but essentially the same. So I'm going to show you this. Wait a minute to close my video.
Definition of what a stakeholder is.
If you want to achieve better results, make a great impression, and save time at work, you should get Grammarly.
A stakeholder is anyone who is actively involved directly or indirectly with a project or initiative that you're involved in. These stakeholders' interests may be positively or negatively affected by the initiative that you're working on. A stakeholder may exert influence on your project and its deliverables. We may directly or indirectly interact with these stakeholders. Any one of these stakeholders may have some needs, wants, requirements that need to be taken into consideration as we work on our initiative. Now, examples of stakeholders would be anyone who has anything to do with the project, such as if you're in a company, yourself, the employees, including management and staff, external parties like government regulators, suppliers, customers who will use this, developers, contractors who you might hire to get the work done. Now, what we need to know about stakeholders is that they could have different roles or responsibilities when it comes to this specific initiative. They could be inside or outside the organization. They may have different objectives. They may be supportive, and sometimes they would like to derail your project. We need to, on any initiative, identify all the stakeholders and continue to do this as the initiative progresses. Any stakeholder that you don't identify could potentially be a problem as you work on your initiative. Now, the best time to identify your stakeholders is as soon as you have that business need. So when your boss calls you in and says, I would like you to work on this, or if this is you working on your own initiative, the moment you know what your need is, you need to start to identify who are these stakeholders that have something to do or can be affected or touch it in one way or interact with it in a different way. Who are these people that have something to do with this project, and start to list them down. There are different ways to identify your stakeholders. First, you may want to consider who are the people that have the approval rights or decision making on the thing that you're working on. So if this is an initiative that needs to be approved by a government entity, then that government entity becomes a stakeholder. If it's your boss, if it's a specific department head, these are the people who have the approval rights towards the thing that you're working on. You could also brainstorm, obviously, with your colleagues and peers and try to determine who should be involved in this one project, who should you go and talk to and find out what they need. So your colleagues, your peers can help you find that out. You could also interview some of the stakeholders or department heads and others, or anyone that you already identified as a stakeholder. Talk to them and try to find out if there are other people that need to be involved. Additionally, you could also run these workshops and discuss maybe your need or your requirements, and some people would point out who some of the stakeholders need to be. You could also draw the organizational model, try to see who reports to whom, and in that way you'd figure the reporting relationship, the communication network that happens within the organization, and understand who of these people needs to be involved in this one project. My favorite is process modeling. So if I map out the process of whatever it is that I'm going to do, let's say it's an app that I'm developing, then who's going to use this app? How will they use it? Who are the people that will be engaged throughout? So if finance has to be involved in the payment, or someone that does the financial aspect, then I need to talk to them. If the user is going to enter information in the beginning, then I need to find out what the user might prefer to see on their screen. How about the back end? People who receive maybe the orders from the app. What do they need to see? What do they need to receive? What about the people who fulfill the orders? For example, what do they need to see? So if you map the process out, you can identify the different actors and players within your own solution. Now, we could map out the process, but what you're going to find out is that there are people who don't belong in that specific process, who don't really have a say in it, and this is called scope modeling. You want to put a boundary on who should be involved and who should not be involved, and those who do not need to be involved should not be included in your initiative and analysis. Now, there's another technique that I really, really love. Actually, this is a tool. It's called the RACI matrix or RACI chart. The RACI chart, the acronyms RACI, it stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. The responsible are the people that are going to do the work. They're going to be tasked with it, and they have to get the job done. The people who are accountable are ultimately responsible and can be blamed if the work isn't done. The consulted are the people we have to check with, maybe subject matter experts, approvals comes from them. They're the ones who give us go, no go, so we got to consult with them. And the informed would be the people who need to be copied on all communication that happens. The RACI tells you who could be a stakeholder on your project. Anyone that you would put on your chart. As an example, this chart that you see here, all the people that would be on this, whether they're marked R, A, C, or I, are stakeholders on your own initiative. You could also use a mind map. What a mind map does is it starts from the heart of the project and starts to branch out different categories of stakeholders. So you might say internal, external, right? And then from internal you could go to management, then you go to staff, and then from management you can talk to branch out to different departments. And at some point you would identify specific people at the end of those branches or map that would be stakeholders in your own initiative. You could also use an organizational chart, as we discussed earlier. This one helps you figure out who is who within this initiative and who needs to be considered as you go on identifying requirements for your own initiative. So once you've identified all of your stakeholders, where do you track them? Do you just remember it, or do you put it on a tool, a document? Well, there is an Excel sheet that you could put it on. It's called the stakeholder register, and here's an example of it here. And what you want to put is information such as their name, their contact details, their role in the project, their title in their job, the location, any special needs they may have. You could categorize the stakeholders, internal, external, contractors, things like that. And also you may want to list down the level of influence that they have. Next, once you've listed all of your stakeholders in the stakeholder register, you want to analyze these stakeholders. So one of the first things which I just mentioned is categorizing your stakeholders by how you see their involvement in the project.
Welcome to University Canada West. If you're trying to pick a specific business,
you also and their influences on this one project. This is part of analyzing them, knowing who is supportive, who is not, who you may tap into because they are part of the leadership or maybe part of the senior management that can help you with moving forward on your specific project. Stakeholder analysis starts from the moment we have the task to do, and it continues all through until the task is completed. Why? Because stakeholders could change along the way. Any stakeholder needs that you missed or misunderstand and gets uncovered late could be a problem for the initiative that you're working on. So you really have to be diligent in understanding what your stakeholders want and really know their level of involvement within your own project. Now, one of the tools that we use is called a stakeholder matrix or stakeholder grid or a stakeholder map. And what it is 4 quadrants showing you the level of importance of the stakeholder. Not all stakeholders are going to be important. This is mapping them based on their level of interest in your initiative and also the level of power that they have. Mind you, the people that have a lot of power and they have a lot of interest, these are the people you really need to pay close attention to their needs and wants. You cannot be messing with their requirements. You need to be very clear. This could be your direct management, and they have a lot of power and they could take you off that specific project, right? Now, there are other stakeholders in another quadrant who are powerful and maybe not so interested in your specific project. These could be government agencies. They regulate what you do. You're not important to them. They just have oversight over what you do, and you really need to make sure that they remain satisfied with whatever it is that you're working on, right? There's another group that does not have that much power, but it is very interested, and that could be yourself, it could be a technical team. They're not that powerful as far as influence, but they really want to know what's going on. So keep them informed. And then finally, there's another quadrant that talks about people with low power and low interest in your project. Obviously, these you can just monitor from a distance. They're not as important as the rest of your stakeholders. Another tool that we use is called the onion diagram. Yeah, it has a funny name to it and maybe a bad smell, who knows? But what the onion diagram represents is the circles that you'll get if you were to slice an onion. And it shows you the level of involvement of different stakeholders. So if you think about any initiative that you're working on, start from the heart of it. Think about who is involved in the work, like the project managers, the business analysts, the technical resources, developers, construction people. So think about the people who are actually doing the work from the heart and try to identify those stakeholders. From the heart, you go to the second layer, which is the directly impacted department within the organization that is asking for this work to be done. Now, obviously, this makes a difference if you're doing the work inside the organization or if it's your own initiative outside. But, outside of the people doing the work, directly impacted organizations and so on, who are these that want this result? Who are the ones that ask for it? It is possible that sales or HR ask for you to do the work, and so they become that second layer. Then you can go to the third layer, which is the whole enterprise, your whole organization, subject matter experts, people outside of the project that are within the enterprise or organization that can support your project. Find out who these people are. Then go outside of that to the customers outside, right? The users of the system, the suppliers. These are the external part of it. So by going through the different layers of this onion, that's why it's called the onion diagram, you can identify different stakeholders along the way. Now, there are other techniques that you could use, like interviews or workshops. You could talk to different people to try to understand what are the needs and wants of specific individuals or groups within the organization. You could also use the stakeholder register that we talked about. Sometimes they call it a stakeholder map or persona. And what it tells you is the different stakeholders and maybe how they are connected to the project, and analyze that connection to the project to try to understand. You could use process modeling, the one we discussed previously, to identify the stakeholders. But in here, what you're trying to do is analyze why they are relevant in the process and where does the system or solution support the needs and wants that they have. You could use surveys and questionnaires to understand what different groups of stakeholders are looking for. And you could also analyze the risk that could come from specific stakeholders who may, for example, want to jeopardize this one project, or maybe their inability to participate could become problematic for you on this specific project. Now, once you've analyzed the stakeholders, the next thing that you want to do is plan for how you want to engage the stakeholders. And here, it's going to require a lot of interpersonal skills and communication. Essentially, once I know that a specific stakeholder is interested in the project due to some aspect of it, then I need to think about how do I collaborate with this specific stakeholder in a positive way, or keep them positive with this collaboration, which could require communication, meeting, face-to-face, and other means where I tap into their needs, wants, and make sure they're always aware of what's going on, and that they're always supportive and working towards a mutual goal for all of us. Now, some of the things you want to consider when you develop your collaboration plan is, the timing for these collaboration events. When are they going to happen? The location, where is that person? Where is the best place to meet with them? What technologies would be best? And what would the stakeholder prefer? Do they prefer in person? Do they want to meet online? Their location, your location, neutral location. Consider that in developing your collaboration plan. The best way to keep your stakeholders engaged, and this is probably one of the best things, is to know what your project is about or your initiative and try to figure out what the benefits would be to that specific stakeholder. If you can talk to the stakeholder and let them know where their benefits will, how is it directly impacting them positively, how it's going to help them minimize some effort or save time, show them what's in it for them, right? And that would keep them focused and positive with you. Now, you could also look at any tools or processes that exist in the organization, and these would be an asset to you in maybe how to interact with different stakeholders. So an organization may already have its own well-developed means for how they engage different stakeholders. Maybe they have a methodology that they use. So see if they have any of these, if you're in an organization, and you could tap into that. You could also go back to lessons learned in the organization and see if, how these stakeholders engaged in different initiatives in the past. Were they always supportive? Were they, troublemakers? Try to get a sense for what, has happened in the past. One thing I want to mention also is keep track of issues as they come up and make sure you get these issues resolved. Never promise a stakeholder that you will take care of something and then ignore it. They would really turn against you. So identify issues, make sure you're tracking them, assign them to someone, delegate it, or do it yourself, and plan for when these major changes are about to happen, and make sure you're communicating with the stakeholder so they know about these things and they're not afraid or surprised or panicking, or getting anxious because of some change that is about to happen. Communication is really going to be key in managing or engaging stakeholders. I keep saying managing, but you know what? You really cannot manage stakeholders. You can only manage their expectations. That's why we prefer to really say engage the stakeholder, manage expectations. These are better terms than saying managing the stakeholder. They're not really yours for you to manage. All right, so then you've done all this work. How do you know that your stakeholders are engaged? Well, there's a few things you could look at. Number one, frequency of communication. Are they communicating with you? If the communication has slowed down, it's either they're distracted or they're not interested or they have an issue with you. Are they showing up to the meetings? Are they showing up to the workshops, right? Are they participating? If they are, that's a good sign. Then you have to go figure out why they're not doing so. And finally, you want to look at how much they're able to provide you for support, like information or resources. When they're holding back, it tells you they're against the project. So find out why it is that they're not providing you with the required resources or information, and that may help clear out some of the issues. Well, that's all for now. I hope that was beneficial. Hope this helped you in working with your stakeholders and keeping them engaged. Let me know if you have any comments, put them down here. If you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're not a subscriber yet, please subscribe so that you'll be notified.
Okay. Some comments about it. And also a personal example. Back then, in a few months before, I was executive president of an institution called the Rural Development Institute. It's a very big institution. We make essentially projects for rural development, and it was important not only to talk about and analyze the beneficiaries, the government, etc. It was also important to have in mind the internal unions of the workforce in the institution, because some of them can be allies and others can be also a problem, right, in the project execution. So in this case of the stakeholder analysis, it is important not only to map the external actors, also the internal workforce that is in our institutions and can be allies or not. So it was, for me, it was important to have the unions in my side, right? In back then. So the video was a little bit long, but I want to reinforce the stakeholder topic. Also, you saw in the video many diagrams, instruments, etc. I proposed this one that is more simple, maybe. But well, you can also use another one for your organization that you think is accurate, right? To your needs. So in this case of the stakeholder analysis, if someone wants to comment something, to comment the video, make an example, maybe, I don't know, someone want to participate in this topic? Okay, is everything is good, so we're going to make a little recess of 15 minutes, and then we're going to talk about what's next in the next month. So see you in 15 minutes. Thank you. Hello, team. Are we back? Are we back, participants?
Yes, I'm back.
Thank you, Samantha.
I'm back
Okay,
also.
I'm here.
thank you very much. So, what is next? Here becomes the tricky part of the session. So, okay, the last part of this session and also the instructions and the conversation for the next month is going to be a dynamic for the formulation of group projects. We as a team in Group Plus think that the lessons and all the formulation guide and also the sessions with experts that you have like 2 weeks ago, it is important to make a final project, a practical experience um, related to your context, right? So, what is next? Students must lead by country in a group or individual way the formulation of a project document based on the presentations and the ECAP project guide, which allows them to consolidate an identification of a current grounded project appropriate to its context and ready to continue with the next steps of the project life cycle. The document is expected to impact the local reality of the participants. So what we need to do, we need to do this in a specific project. I propose that the groups, well, you can, if you want to, you can do it individually. Um, Also, we prefer that you make like groups for each country, but the essential thing is to make these project identification components for a specific experience or example or project that you're working in your organization, etc. Um, so this is the next step, and we have some follow updates. Um, I think we can have like a one-on-one or vis-a-vis sessions, 7th of July and 4th of July for follow-up, doubts, talking to you about the project that you are working on, and a final presentation group the July 21st between 9 a.m. and 12 midday. So this is the next step, right? We have like um 21 days to make this exercise. So what do you think, people? Are we okay with this? Comments before we make the groups? Okay,
I'm okay with it.
Um, I just
thank you very much.
we have a conflict on July 21st. Do you think there'll be any flexibility to change that date?
Yeah, we can talk about it, yes.
Okay.
Maybe let me see a little like calendar. We can do it maybe Wednesday 20. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have one day less, one day ahead. Okay, so like let's make some groups. Team, okay, let me see something. I'm going first to group you by countries, and then we are going to talk about Andrew, which country are you? Okay. German, your country,
I'm from Suriname.
like this.
Suriname with the A at the end.
Okay, like this.
No, a E,
An
a E at the
okay,
end.
like
Yes.
this. Okay, we have German here.
No, like a
Um,
E, like Suriname, a E at the end. Suriname with a E at the end. Yes, that's it.
like this.
Yes.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you. Lawrence, your country? Lawrence, Jong. Okay. Philip, married Philip?
Yes, Diego.
Yes. Yes, Ingrid.
Lawrence answered in the chat. He is from Belize.
It is okay. Okay. Philip, your country?
Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay. Who else? Joseph?
Sorry, I'm from Guyana.
From where?
Guyana. Guyana.
Yeah.
Guyana.
Okay. Very well. Ria?
Sedikaya.
Taylor, excuse me?
Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, we go here. Ria?
I'm from Trinidad.
Okay. Samantha Ganga Persa.
Also from Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay. China Salim. China Salim. Okay, she said he's from also Trinidad. Okay, we're missing only Andrew and only Andrew. Andrew, which country is yours?
Belize.
It's okay. So yeah, what about the person not here today? I'm going to send the groups to the email I usually use to this meeting where you receive the link and etc. And I'm also going to ask is someone else want to be in a specific group? Maybe we need to check the attendance in the sessions. Maybe someone attended 3 sessions, but not today. So maybe we can add that person to any group. So we are complete, right? Yeah. So this is the groups. So we have in the case of, let me see, just a little. In the case of Suriname, which have only German. In the case of Belize, Trinidad, and Guyana, in the case of Belize, we have Lawrence and Andrew. In the case of Trinidad, we have Philip, Taylor, Ria, Samantha, and Salim. And in the case of Guyana, we have only Joseph. So, in the case of Suriname and Guyana, you can also make a team of partners if you have to make the project. And well, in the case of Belize, I think Andrew and Lawrence can make the project together. And in the case of Trinidad, we have 5 participants. So, well, we have a bigger group here. So, I'm also going to send you, maybe you can share it also in the chat, the contacts, right? The phone number maybe, or the email to make contact between you, between the participants of the group. So you can coordinate individual sessions between each one and also the topic and etc. Essentially, we need to identify a project in the case of each group and make the identification of the project document. I'm going to send you also the presentation today so you can make it a reference. Also, Maria Paula, maybe we can talk about a little bit of the campus and the working guide that is on the campus also, remembering the credential for each one and etc.
Yeah, sure. Everyone receive in the weeks prior a username and a password to access the virtual campus, ICAP virtual campus. So if anyone didn't receive the credential, please send me a message. But I think that everyone has have it, right?
Yep, I have it.
Okay. So you can access the ICAP virtual campus, and in the campus there is all the materials of the sessions, also the videos, and a guide. Also, today I will send an email to you with all the recordings, also the materials with the presentations and the guide that Luis Diego is talking about. So we can have all the materials available.
Thank you very much, Maria Paula. Okay, team, are we ready for next step? German, do you feel okay being alone? Also, Joseph?
Yes, I'm just wondering what the deadline is for the project, if we have a deadline there for the project.
Yeah, remember this. In theory, well, we are going to have some follow-up sessions, 7th of July, and um, also the next week. And finally, the final date that we are going to presentate the when you're going to make the presentation of the project that we choose is July 20. So July 20, we're going to have a session like this one, and we're going to see 4 presentations, but basically a presentation for each group. In the case of you and Guyana, you are alone, so it's only going to be you. But also the Belize and Trinidad ones. Okay, then I think we are done for today. Thank you very much for your participation in these 4 classes. See you next week. The follow-up meetings are going to be vis-a-vis. I'm going to, like in a half an hour, only talk with German, other half an hour only talk with the Belize team, the Trinidad and Tobago team. So are going to be like more bilateral meetings, not a big um, team meeting. And yes, we finally are going to talk all in the July 20. Okay. Any more
Thank
questions?
you.
Or thank you very much, Samantha. Okay.
No, no more question from my side. Thank you, Diego, for the presentation.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. So have a nice day. See you next week. Thank you very much.